Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight, where we bring you the latest news, information and analysis on what's really going on in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the BRICS Plus. Now, before I go on to what the latest news is, I'd like to mention the fact that we have a website called SCO BRICS Insight.com, where everything that I mentioned in the video today are covered in major in-depth articles on the website, and at the end of the video I will post links to each and every one of the stories, so that for those of you who want an in-depth look, much more than the sound bites and short information that I give you, you can then visit the website and get a much greater and clearer understanding of what's really going on. Now, it was a report came out the other day, and it stated that the BRICS Plus share in the global GDP will move to a much greater level and continue to increase much more than the members of the G7. This is because the new members, obviously, and the development of the current members. By 2040, they think the GDP of the BRICS Plus will rise from 36% of the global GDP to over 40%, and that's by 2040. And that will be around twice the level of the G7. They say that this is really down to the fact that the Western economies are not moving at the same pace as the rest of the world, who continue to develop and work together to increase either GDP and the living standards of all of their population. In the other day in Moscow, Bahrain, one of the countries of the Gulf, announced that it was wanting to join BRICS. Now, given the fact that Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates plus Iran are now members of the BRICS, it does make sense for them to join to make sure that they are not being left behind. Plus, it can only be a matter of time before the gas powerhouse Qatar decides that it probably wants to join this growing band of countries that are moving forward and increasing their cooperation with each other. Now, that's important for the development of the country itself, but also for the development of the BRICS Plus. Anyway, the IMF recently gave out a report where it was looking at China, and it projects that the Chinese economy in 2023 will grow by 5.4%. This is due to, it says, the robust recovery from the pandemic. Now, as you all remember, China was probably one of the strictest in its level of lockdowns during the pandemic, and obviously its GDP suffered. They also say that they think that the GDP will slow down slightly in 2024 to only 4.6%. Now, the Chinese customs authorities just after that announced their trade figures. Now, they announced that they had a 5.6% reduction in their exports and a 6.5% decrease in their imports. Now, looking at the figures in themselves, the largest trading partners remain much the same. The ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, still remain their top trading partner, with a turnover of 743 billion. The trade with the EU was 653 billion, and the trade with the US was 550 billion. So we took in quite substantial amounts of money. It doesn't say what level was with the trade between them, was it the ratio between imports and exports? I mean, did these countries export more to China, or did they import more from China? But I'll certainly be looking at that in a bit more detail. African countries, by the way, export by trade related with China of 230, and Latin America was around 404 billion. And I think the bulk of that's probably made up from BRICS members of Argentina and Brazil. Now, I know that Brazil and Argentina are currently trading in yuan, the Chinese currency, so I'm sure that that has enabled the trade levels to increase by using the Chinese currency, as China imports quite a large amount of soybeans, which are used for animal feed from Brazil, and that contributes quite a bit. Yeah. On the subject of Brazil, it was recently announced by Lula, the president of Brazil, that he's looking to increase his level of trade with Russia. He currently is looking to expand that level of trade into areas like petroleum products and fertilizers. Currently, the US is the main supplier of petroleum products to Brazil, and he's looking to work with Russia and perhaps use either local currencies of the Brazilian real or ruble, or use the Chinese yuan. The problem with Brazil is it is a major oil exporter, which it does export, but it doesn't have the sufficient refining capacity to cover its own domestic needs, hence the need to import. And with Russia having problems exporting what it used to export to the EU, then I think that you're probably looking at sending the petroleum products that used to go to the EU onto Brazil. So we shall see how that one pans out, particularly as Russia imports quite a bit of things like coffee and other foodstuffs, etc., from Brazil. So we shall see. Anyway, on to Russia itself. The IMF again did a report into Russia, and it basically said that it was growth which they expected of 0.7%, which I think was pretty much a very low estimate, was actually 2.2%. This improvement was basically based on the high energy prices that Russia gets for its export products of hydrocarbons, gas, oil, petroleum products, etc. But obviously the agricultural sector and chemicals, fertilizer has all enabled Russia, particularly as it's redirected its export supplies away from the countries of the EU to the global south, to the Far East, to the Asian markets, Latin America, etc. So things are looking particularly good for Russia. On the Russia-Chinese trade, well, that's just growing exponentially. It's now over 200 billion for 2023, and all of that is done in local currencies of the yuan or the ruble. So that's interesting. On the subject of the US, now it's an interesting one which I'm particularly involved in, is the US has imposed over 17,000 sanctions on Russia. But one major product that they have not sanctioned is nuclear fuel. Now, the US has a large number of nuclear plants, and they provide something like 25% of the US electricity. Unfortunately, they back in the 1990s started to buy cheap Russian nuclear fuel. The price of that nuclear fuel dropped on the world market, and it put out of business a number of plants in the US that used to process nuclear fuel for the nuclear plants in the US. So they are now down to only one in New Mexico, which actually provides around 17 to 18% of the nuclear fuel that's needed by the US. Now, the US talks a great game of how it's going to get rid of its need for anything from Russia. But given that Rosatom is the world's largest provider of nuclear fuel, it's unlikely in the next 5 to 10 years that the US is going to be able to do that. So that's always going to be a major and burning issue, particularly for the US as it tries to find new ways of sourcing nuclear fuel. But I think it will be a futile effort. On other aspects of sanctions and trade, the US has recently imposed a ban on high-power computer chips, mainly used for AI, and that's badly affecting some of their companies like NVIDIA, who are a major producer and exporter to China of their most powerful chips. They're actually now providing slightly lower level chips to China, and China is really rapidly developing its own ability to produce these type of chips. And so, as with all sanctions, there's always a way around it and how they're going to develop. Also on the subject of technology, Apple seems to be suffering as Huawei, or Hawaii, however you, Huawei, the mobile phones and computer supplier, recently brought out a new phone using a chip that they developed themselves in China. And this has taken a substantial share of the market, and Apple's share of the Chinese market, which is one of its most important markets. From what I understand, it has around 20 to 22% of the Chinese market, and that is dropping quite dramatically. So American companies are being badly affected by these types of trade embargoes as China looks to become more self-sufficient in what it gets involved in. Anyway, so I will keep you up to date. Do look below if you're interested in any of the topics that I've raised, and I look forward to you joining me for another video in the very near future. Thank you for your for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will post the links below. Thank you.